Yo, what's up guys? So as you all know, Marvel and DC has ripped each other off so many times throughout the years. Sometimes they're terrible, like Black Spider from DC, who if you couldn't tell is inspired from Spider-Man. But other times the ripped off character is better than the original. Like when Marvel ripped off DC's own magnetism themed villain. They took the framework, but gave him a compelling backstory, complex morals, and a cooler name and color scheme. And he just took off in popularity in the comics back in the day. And he only got more popular with X-Men 92 and various X-Men movies and shows, which is something we definitely cannot say about Dr. Polaris. So as per my boy's request, let's rank these characters from the most blatant, uncreative ripoffs that probably shouldn't even be legal, to some that are honestly really good and most likely left a huge impact on popular culture. We'll also see who will be more popular in 2025 going forward, and of course, we'll pick who's better between the two, the OG or the ripoff. And let's get started with the worst ripoff I've ever seen, bro. It's bad, and it has to be Tartarus from DC. The funny thing is they knew what they were doing with this. It's supposed to be a parody. It's just so funny how they completely ripped off Thanos in the most hilarious ways possible, bro. He's a cool character though. I enjoyed reading the story, but it's just so crazy. First off, just look at him. Like, he looks like Thanos if he lived in Canada for a while, or if he just played too much God of War. And he's from an alternate universe who made a pact with that universe's Darkseid to ensure that Darkseid would leave the Earth alone, so Tartarus could rule it with the 8 rings of the ancient spectrum, which I'm sure sounds familiar. And with these weapons, he began what he called his eternity conquest. This is so blatant, but you can't help but love it. He almost got away with it too, killing various characters along the way until his neck got completely snapped like a pencil by Darkseid. And we have this guy versus Thanos, who is so famous that I don't even have to talk about him yet or choose between them. Y'all already know who I'm gonna choose. So yeah, the fact that they just put Thanos through one of those Hot Wheels color changing car station things, y'all remember that? And called it a rap is just why he's in last place. Luckily, he was never meant to be taken seriously. Someone who was, though, is Imperiex. And this is not even close. Galactus gets the dub both in popularity and in my personal opinion. Because Imperiex is just a carbon copy on a bigger scale. Who's Galactus? A huge planet-eating celestial who uses his heralds to scout planets for him to eat, has countless appearances, and has even grown as a person a little bit. Versus Imperiex. And who's Imperiex? A huge being that destroys entire universes by swallowing whole every planet. And of course the creators, went with swallowing instead of just destroying. But yeah, he did this to every planet and galaxy one by one and uses his heralds to set up devices in order for him to do so. Galactus does it out of hunger, while Imperiex does it because he feels like it's his destiny. So they basically made a stronger, but also cornier and more forgettable Galactus, which is why the original wins. DC's not having a good track record with this, but it does start getting close with Black Racer versus Silver Surfer. And that's because this knockoff is pretty cool, actually, showing up 5 years after Silver Surfer. While he rocks a surfboard, Racer over here has skis, and both have that one color aesthetic. But where the Silver Surfer hyperspeeds through the intergalactic waves of space, looking for planets for Galactus to eat, Black Racer is straight up death. When it's your time, he speeds through space and time anywhere he is to find you, collect your soul, and guides you to the afterlife. The only person that's ever got away from him is Barry Allen, because he's of course fast enough to outrun literal death. But he even kills gods with ease using his death touch, which is why Darkseid is extremely afraid of him. And it's crazy to see, seeing Darkseid cower in fear like this is something I've never seen before. And it's honestly really cool. Popularity wise though, it's not even close. Silver Surfer is way more popular than Black Racer due to various comics, TV shows, and movies. And I'm also picking Silver Surfer purely because of a nostalgia, which y'all should have expected. It's literally in my channel now. Alright, now we're getting to the good characters though, ripoffs that made such an impact that it's hard to choose between them and the original. Like Green Arrow versus Hawkeye. Throughout the years, people came to a conclusion that Hawkeye is a ripoff of Green Arrow since this man debuted first. Which is true. This is one of the cases where both the original and the knockoff are in equal standing with each other. And that's because Marvel made Hawkeye so different that even as a kid, I never put it together if one was a ripoff of the other, because they couldn't be any more different. That's why I don't really call Hawkeye a knockoff. Green Arrow was a spoiled rich man who wanted to protect the innocent after being stranded on an island for 5 years and training himself while he was there. Versus Hawkeye, a super spy who was orphaned as a kid, grew up and escaped from an abusive community home, joined the circus because of his unnatural marksmanship, and took those skills to the Avengers. They both are respectable members of their superhero teams. They also coincidentally get made fun of for being the weakest.
Now, Hawkeye, it's time to do your thing. I'm out of arrows. All right, I'll be in the car. Stay safe.
But in regards to who has the most influence right now in 2025, Green Arrow takes the L because the MCU and Marvel rivals even propelled his fame so much. We haven't seen Green Arrow going crazy since the CW, really. But even with that, I still prefer the original in this because anytime I think of an Archer, I only think of Green Arrow. Next, we have Black Cat versus Catwoman. These two also play tug of war when it comes to popularity, despite Catwoman debuting more than 20 years before Black Cat. Catwoman started out in the 1940s as a cat burglar, who over the years stole either out of necessity, for the thrill, or because of a history of abuse. You know, it depends on the writer. Black Cat, on the other hand, came in years later but has been more consistent in her portrayals. She mainly steals because her dad did it, right? And it's fun for her. But she's also like a modern day Robin Hood, stealing from the rich and giving to the poor. Low-key, she kinda reminds me of Quiet a little bit, because that's what she was doing at the end of season 1 of Twisted Metal. Since they're really similar, popularity-wise, Catwoman will always win here. But speaking as someone in a relationship, or even if I was single, I'd rather deal with Black Cat than Catwoman because at least she's straight up with you, and I think has more of a heart. Catwoman will sleep with your adopted son if she thinks it would benefit her, bro. And shame on him too, don't get me wrong, but yeah, that's why I'm picking Black Cat. Timberwolf versus Wolverine. And yes, apparently Wolverine is inspired from Timberwolf from DC. To my understanding, Timberwolf came first. He had the fit, the hairstyle, and has wolf-like powers with animalistic tendencies. A couple years later, there comes Wolverine with a really similar personality and fit, even similar colors. They literally called him Lone Wolf even till this day, and they had the same hairstyle, with the differences being longer metal claws and a healing factor, which is something DC retroactively added to Timberwolf after Wolverine's debut. Over the years, they tried to add more details to Timberwolf, but no matter what they tried, he just never took off like that. And I have to agree here, who doesn't like Wolverine? Especially after Deadpool 3. Like, there is no coming back for this guy. Next up is Deadpool versus Deathstroke. And it's a known fact that Deadpool is a knockoff of Deathstroke. Both are mercenaries and weapon experts, with rapid healing. The differences being Deadpool's teleportation device, and Deadpool has way better healing than really anybody in comics. And Deathstroke's ability to use 90% or more of his brain capacity, like Lucy. But while Deathstroke is more cold and calculating, and is often seen as a Bat's villain, Marvel flipped that and turned Deadpool into the yapper of the century, in the best way possible. He whoops people and is hilarious while doing it, breaking the fourth wall, and gets the funniest reactions out of more established characters. That's the reason I loved him as a kid, and I know I'm not the only one. So I'll always love the original, don't get me wrong, but in this instance, this is where the knockoff takes the dub here. For me, and even for the general public. But this whole list has mainly been about Marvel copying DC, right? Now it's time to flip the script, and these are gonna be hard, I'm gonna be honest with you. Darkseid versus Thanos. Back in the early days, Marvel needed an imposing, overarching villain. A no-nonsense tyrant that even the reader fears, And who better to model this villain after, at the time, than someone who was already killing the game in DC. Thus, Thanos was born. But while Darkseid is already powerful in and of itself and is more comparable to Galactus nowadays, what makes Thanos dangerous is his ingenuity and how unpredictable he is. Sometimes he goes around and collects the most powerful weapons in the universe in order to soup himself up and conquer everything. And other times, he forces worlds to give him the tribute, which means he forces everyone on that planet to give him the heads of everyone from the ages 16 to 22, all in order to find and kill his kids. Or even terrorizes this one kid on every single birthday he has, versus Darkseid, who wants to reshape the world, really the entire universe, into his image, you know? So he's your traditional conqueror, the one that you see in the history books. But this is why Thanos is more popular. He's just more meme-worthy, really, especially after the success he had in the MCU. But I can't lie, I still think the original is better, and that's because of the animated series whenever I was a kid. If I didn't grow up watching those shows, Thanos would have won. But since I did, Darkseid takes the cake for me. Number 2, and this one's a bit strange, but we have Batman versus Daredevil, Moon Knight, and Spider-Man. I'm gonna talk about this in another video, but Batman has a lot of characters that were inspired by him in some way, shape, or form. These 3 characters, though, are the closest Marvel has to Batman, because they all represent different aspects of him more than any other characters in Marvel. Moon Knight has an extremely similar style, has one personality, who is rich and is able to fund all of Moon Knight's tech and gadgets. They both are also brutal against crime and uses fear to do their job. And that's because they share the same anti-hero archetype. Both Spider-Man and Daredevil share a similar backstory to Batman, having a tragic event happen to a parental figure which shaped their morals.
Remember, with no power comes no bitches.
And if anything, Daredevil is more like a bat than Batman is, because of his blindness giving him echolocation, which is what a bat uses to see. While Spider-Man has a strict rule against killing just like Batman and has an extremely famous rogues gallery, one that even houses his very own Catwoman. You know, you can even make comparisons between Robin and Miles Morales too, but I don't have the time for that. But it is interesting how much they were inspired from Batman, and I think it's interesting to think about how these characters would be if Batman wasn't around. Would they be the same characters? I don't think they would. But even with all that said, all 4 of these characters are very different in a lot of ways. You just can't discount the inspiration, that's all. Okay, so this is the honorable mention section. I have no kind of script. I'm just gonna go off the top, or the dome, or whatever people say. And let's get to Spider-Man's knockoffs. I'm trying not to say too much about his quote-unquote counterparts from DC, because eventually I'm gonna make a Spider-Man knockoff video just like I did with this Superman one. Now when that's gonna be, I have no idea, because I'm still working on the Batman one, and I'm just backed up on videos. All you need to know is that these 2 are completely different characters in the comics. But in the TV shows like Young Justice, they make sure that this man is just like Spider-Man on there. It's pretty weird. I don't know why they do that. But yeah, no, Spider-Man has the vote popularity-wise and in my opinion. Magneto versus Dr. Polaris. I already talked about him a little bit in the intro, but I didn't include him in the video because it's not even worth mentioning. Magneto's gonna win every time. Same thing with Red Rocket versus Iron Man. I've seen all over the internet that Rocket Red is a knockoff of Iron Man, and it looks like he is. But no matter how this dude was, I was gonna pick Iron Man anyways. Everybody would. Green Lantern versus Nova Corp. This one is kind of interesting actually. And of course I'm gonna choose Green Lantern, and so does the general consensus. But I do think that it's worth making a video about the differences between these 2. And lastly on the list we have the Terrifics versus the Fantastic Four. And this one is actually pretty close, but I haven't read the Terrifics comics yet. I'm probably crazy for not doing that. I'm gonna give it to the Fantastic Four. But okay, now that that's over, we finally get to my number 1 pick. And this is the ripoff or knockoff, whatever you want to call it, that has without a doubt made a huge splash on the comic scene and just really left a huge impact on popular culture altogether. And here they are. Did you know that X-Men was inspired by the Doom Patrol? Because I didn't. I know I'm late. I know, but I had no idea. That's crazy to me. But yeah, Doom Patrol came first, focusing on a group of freaks led by a charismatic old man who all became a family while saving the world. Meanwhile, X-Men took the idea and made it about mutants, representing prejudice and discrimination against marginalized groups like the civil rights and LGBTQ communities. Doom Patrol dives into complex moralities, meaning not every hero or villain is completely good or bad. while X-Men stories are more clear-cut between good and evil. Honestly, this could be a whole video, but while I personally love Doom Patrol's crazy morals and weirdness, X-Men left such a massive cultural impact with its relatable characters, iconic storylines, and because of just what it represents, that I have to pick X-Men. Like, if the X-Men wasn't here, man, my childhood would not be the same. So to me, it makes sense as to why the X-Men took off and Doom Patrol didn't, even though they represent more or less the same topics. So for the #1 spot, the ripoff wins for me. And that gives the originals 8 points and the knockoffs 5 points. Which means to me, no matter how many times a company knocks off a character, they're likely to never reach the fame or status the original has, without having its own sort of originality. And yeah, that's it for the video. I'm taking requests, so let me know what video y'all want to see in the comments below, and I'll make it happen. Yeah, until then, I'll catch y'all in the next one. Peace out.